Hello everyone, it's Daniel, Modern Identity Lead from Formula 5. In this video, we are going to talk about step-up authentication with Microsoft Entra External ID. As always, a little bit of theory. There is a question: what is step-up authentication? Step-up authentication is a security method where additional verification is required when performing sensitive actions, like transferring money or accessing private data, to ensure it's really you. It adds an extra layer of security beyond just a password. So now the next question is, what is conditional access auth context? To trigger a step-up authentication from within the applications and services, Microsoft Entra Conditional Access Engine's auth context feature is used. Conditional access is the zero trust control plane that allows to target policies for access to all the applications secured by Microsoft Entra ID and Microsoft Entra External ID. So in this case, we can use conditional access to secure access to all our applications secured with Entra and Entra External ID. However, what about the situations where we would like to secure a specific actions within our applications after the user is successfully authenticated and has access to our application? For that, we can use conditional access authentication context or auth context. This allows to apply granular policies to sensitive data and actions instead of just at the application level. Okay, so what are some examples here? Access to a sensitive report in the insurance application, access to a prescription in the medical application, or access to a payment gateway in the shopping application. All those operations can require step-up authentication. And to implement that, we will use Microsoft Entra External ID Conditional Access Authentication context. Great, so that's about the theory. Now let's see it in action. As always, for this demo, I will use our Formula Healthcare demo portal. Before I can access it, I have to sign in. So I will select my account. I've already created my account in Microsoft Entra External ID. So once I provided email, I have to also provide the password. And once I'm successfully authenticated, I can access this portal. So as we can see, once the portal is displayed, here is my image, my first name, my last name, and the patient ID. Great. So now let's see step-up authentication in action. Let's go to Get a Prescription section. This is the place where I can download my prescription, just to make it simple. So I can click Get Prescription button. However, before I can access prescription, I can see this information. To obtain prescription, strong authentication is required. Click Confirm button to proceed. So this is where step-up authentication is implemented with Microsoft Entra External ID. Let me click Confirm button. And as we can see, I'm redirected to Microsoft Entra External ID. And there is information displayed that security code was successfully sent to my email address. And I should provide this code here for additional verification. So let me grab this code now. Perfect. I have the code. Let me click Verify button. And after a successful verification, I'm redirected back to the portal. So let's open Get a Prescription tab again, and let's click Get Prescription button. Now we can see that there is information. Prescription was successfully sent to your email address. Great. So this is how step-up authentication works with Microsoft Entra External ID. Now let's see what is happening underneath. To configure step-up authentication, we have to define conditional access authentication context. So in Microsoft Entra Admin Center, we have to go to Conditional Access tab and then select Authentication Context. And this is the place where we can create new authentication context by clicking New Authentication Context button. And as we can see, here we have to provide the name, description. We have to select Publish to Applications because we want to use it within our applications. And we have to select the ID for this authentication context. This has to be unique. So once we use this ID with one authentication context, we cannot use it with any other. So under authentication context, as you can see, I created require strong authentication context. So here there is description. Require strong authentication before accessing confidential data. And the ID is set to C1. and it's also published to applications. Great. So now let's get back to conditional access policies, and there is only one. Require MFA when accessing confidential data. And this is the place where we are defining usage of this conditional access authentication context. So it applies to all users, and under target resources, I selected authentication context and require strong authentication. And now under grant tab, I selected grant access but require multi-factor authentication. And obviously we have to enable this policy. Once we save changes, we can make adjustments in the source code of our application. Before we see Visual Studio, one more thing. Formula Healthcare demo application is obviously registered in this Microsoft Entra External ID tenant. And under manifest, I have to enable using step-up authentication. So to be more precise, conditional access authentication context. So here, under ID token, as you can see, I have this additional claim called ACRS. So this claim will be used to indicate whether user use strong authentication to access the portal. If not, user will be asked for additional verification. So this is very important to be added here in app manifest. Here is Visual Studio with the source code of Formula Healthcare demo portal. Okay, so what is happening when it comes to step-up authentication when we click this Get Prescription button? So first of all, trigger step-up authentication async method is called. In this case, we are checking whether user is authenticated, and we look into the claims in the ID token to check if there is a claim called ACRS with value C1. So the case is that every time user is successfully authenticated with Microsoft Entra External ID, application receives ID token just to confirm user identity. So we look into this ID token to check whether ACRS claim is there with the value C1 that we define in the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. If there is no claim like this, user is required to go through step-up authentication. So that's why we do this redirection to sign in route, and also we are passing action, step-up authentication required. So now in this onRedirect to identity provider function here, we specify additional claims that will be sent to Microsoft Entra External ID to indicate that step-up authentication is required. So that's why we have it here encoded under the claims. So once we redirect to Microsoft Entra External ID with those additional claims here, Entra will display OTP page where we have to provide the code, go through additional verification, and once it's successful, we are redirected back to the application. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. And if you still have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me using my Formula 5 email. Additionally, I recommend checking Formula 5 External Identities Hub Architecture, which is our accelerator to implement solutions with Microsoft Entra External ID. If you would like to learn more about External Identities Hub Architecture, I recommend watching my another video available on our channel. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.